If you look at my trash can, you might mistake me for a laborophilist. Can't even say it. A laborophilist. A laborophilist. That's it. Or a collector of beer bottles.
Laborphilist.
Laborphilist, yes. Perhaps avid collectors don't trash theirs after use, but so I might not qualify as one of those. But there are people who collect all manner of things. Voluminous collect matchboxes. A guy named Stephen Smith is the Guinness World Record holder for collecting more than 1 million matchbox labels from 130 countries. The things you learn at Jubilee. You would never learn anywhere else. Vexophiles collect flags. Plangonologists collect dolls. Phallarists collect medals and badges and pins. And arctophiles collect teddy bears. My favorite, though, is panapictographists. Panapictographists. What do you think they collect? Refrigerator magnets. That's a good guess. Panapictographists. They collect comic books.
Hey.
So having a collection of specific items is one thing, but there are those in this world who collect a whole lot of different things and fill their houses with them. And we often call them hoarders.
Yeah.
They fill their homes with things that other people deem to be trash. And they struggle sometimes to understand why they do what they do. So the psychology of hoarding, it really is complex, with no easy answers for those who want to stop. But we are all hoarders in one particular way. Every single one of us hoards emotions. We can remember grievances and slights dating all the way back to kindergarten. And for many of us, when we remember those past grievances, they're still fresh. We can still feel every single bit of it. We often hoard good thoughts as well. All those great emotions where we hearken back to our glory days, when things were great for us, things were easy, we were enjoying a lot of success or attention from the world, and perhaps we're not getting that anymore. So perhaps we're not hoarders or voluminous or whatever, but maybe we're just emotionalists. People who gather and curate each emotion and then store it within ourselves. The Eastern religions call our collection of emotions samskaras. And what they do when we hoard up these samskaras is they block the flow of that divine energy that wants to move through us into the world. They dim that light of God that we're called to be. So today, Jubilants, we're going to examine emotional hoarding and our tendency to do so, both good and bad thoughts, and then begin the process of clearing them out so the whole world can say, oh yeah. Hello, my name is Candace, and I am a recovering hoarder. Don't get me wrong, though. I may be compulsive about cluttering, but I don't hoard things. Instead, I am a recovering hoarder of emotions. If we're all honest with ourselves, I think we could all join Emotional Hoarders Anonymous, because we all tend to hang on to those useless emotions, or what A Course in Miracles calls dead thoughts, that just don't serve us anymore. Those thoughts and emotions are often the bad memories we hold, the grievances from 10, 20, 30, 40, who knows, seems years ago, and they're fresh in our minds whenever we recall them. Then we roll around in them, have a good time. Those dead thoughts and emotions, though, may also be of memories we call good. Again, these old thoughts, their emotions, they're fresh when we call them up. And these thoughts of our past glory days and times that we wish that we could return to. And what makes us want to hoard those thoughts is that they are in some way precious to us. Just like those who hoard things, we invest ourselves in these emotions and thoughts, and then we build our personality, our identities, and our lives around them. So what's wrong with that, you might ask? You know, it's what makes me me, right? Well, just like a physical hoarder, old thoughts and emotions that aren't serving you anymore, they tend to get smelly. Think about it. I mean, if you have ever watched any of those TV shows about hoarders, many times those who come in to clean up have to wear respirators. You know, you can't smell it. You don't get smell-o-vision. You don't get the whole impact of what a hoarder's house is like, but the smell. It's decomposing food and books and newspapers, sometimes dead animals who get lost in the mess. I've seen those droppings, absolutely. And it makes it unbearable for those just walking in. They don't live there. We, however, the original hoarders of these emotions, we have gone nose-blind to the stench of our own dead thoughts and ideas. The thoughts and emotions that I hoarded years ago had many smelly things composting in the pile. It was anger and judgment and resentment and cynicism and distrust, feelings of victimization, feelings of abandonment, feelings of jealousy, so much more. I would just dump it on the compost pile there in the middle of the living room, right in my own house, right here, this house here. And most of them come, of course, from my parents' divorce and the deep anger and feelings of injustice and abandonment that sprang up from that. But the thing is, I loved those thoughts. I loved those feelings because I was convinced that they would keep me safe. And you know what? For a while they did. But only as long as I could arrange the outside world to not hit those thoughts and feelings and trigger me. So how well do you think that worked out? Yeah. Honestly, I stayed angry and triggered most all the time. I had no idea how stinky it was inside of me and how that stench hit those around me. I bemoaned the fact that I couldn't make any friends, and all the ones I had were the disagreeable sort. So of course they were. They were used to the smell of anger and fear. They had their own. Our odoriferous emotions sort of meshed well together. It wasn't until I discovered that I didn't have to live this way through an introduction to my gateway guru, Wayne Dyer, that I began to get a whiff of my own dead thoughts. Wasn't nice. But Dyer introduced me to many of the ideas from A Course in Miracles that helped me, including the key thing, which was the permission that I needed to see a different world. And most importantly, to find a way to forgive my own father so I could release those dead thoughts and emotions around him that were keeping me trapped in this fetid emotional house that I was building. And this is where the real work begins, of removing what the Buddhists and the Hindus call those samskaras, those mental impressions that we build up within ourselves that blocks that flow of divine energy, that Shakti that we all possess. If you want to be free, author and teacher Michael Singer says, you must first accept that there is pain in your heart. You have stored it there, and you've done everything you can think of to keep it there deep inside so that you never have to feel it. And this is step one in becoming a recovering emotional hoarder, jubilants. We got to be willing to accept that we have hoarded those painful memories, and we have done everything in our power to keep them there. The ego, of course, likes to keep us focused on hoarding even more and more dead thoughts and emotions. We get them coming at us every day. Ooh, I like that one. I'm keeping that one. For the ego, there's never too much. It wants to stuff our inner world, not just with all those stinky thoughts, but all of the thoughts that we perceive to be good or pleasant, that convince us that all of our good times are behind us and nothing will be as good as the good old days. We think those are good thoughts, but they smell just as bad as the other ones. Singer reminds us there is also tremendous joy, beauty, love, and peace within you, but they are on the other side of the pain, he says. On the other side is freedom. Your true greatness hides on the other side of that layer of pain. The only way to release the samskaras, jubilants, is to clean up your emotional house, to release those fetid, painful thoughts and emotions along with all the perceived good ones that are holding you back. This is the core of spiritual work, Singer says. When you are comfortable with pain passing through you, you will be free. Breathe deeply. You carry all the ingredients to turn your life into a nightmare, writes that Muslim Sufi poet Hafez. Don't mix them. And it sounds like such a simple thing, right? Just don't mix up your dead thoughts and emotions, such as fear or despair or anger or shame, even those happy thoughts that keep us from seeing the infinite possibilities of new joys that are existing in this moment. Being willing to recognize our emotional hoarding tendencies, then becoming aware of how those stinky thoughts are ruining our lives in this moment, gives us the ability to recognize that the opportunity to recover is around us at every moment. The key to stop all that mixing of our nightmarish ingredients of dead thoughts and emotions is, according to A Course in Miracles, forgiveness. Forgiveness, today's lesson says, lets the veil be lifted up that hides the face of Christ from those who look with unforgiving eyes upon the world. It lets you recognize the Son of God and clears your memory of all dead thoughts so that remembrance of your Father can arise across the threshold of your mind. Forgiveness, jubilants, that's those respirator-wearing cleanup crew that graciously comes in to sweep away all those stinky dead thoughts that we have hoarded all these years. That crew cleaned up my inner world when I found Wayne Dyer's example. In several of his books and his talks, he tells the story about how he set out to forgive his father. His father had abandoned the family when he was very young. He barely even remembered his father other than the fact that he was a jerk. He was a butt, and that's all he remembered. But during his search, he discovered that his father had died a few years earlier. And so he did all the research necessary to find out where his father was buried, and he went to his father's grave to forgive him. I replicated this journey with my own father, who had already passed when I began recovering and clearing out all the stinky feelings that I had been hoarding about him. Just like Dyer, my journey was cathartic. And like Singer says, once I released all those samskaras around my dad, I began to walk through this world more vibrant and alive than ever before. Eventually, I also found Singer's other promise to be true, that when you clean up your emotional house, you will understand there is an ocean of love behind all of this fear and pain. And jubilants, that's what I invite you to do today, is to discover that ocean of love that is behind all of the stinky fear and pain you have been hoarding inside yourself for too long. You are the light of the world, as Jesus says in today's reading, but you have been hiding that light under a bushel of emotionally dead thoughts that you have been hoarding for far too long. A Course reminds us that our task in this world is not to find love, but to remove all of the barriers that we have built against it. We already are love, but we just put all this stuff in front of it so we don't see it. The key to removing them is forgiveness. And that forgiveness starts with yourself. It's only through forgiving myself for hoarding all of those stinky thoughts about my dad and then mixing them together to turn my life into a pretty neat little nightmare that I discovered that the ocean of love was on the other side of that pain. An ocean of love for myself, an ocean of love for my father, who I had not loved for a very, very long time. An ocean of love. Right there, right on the other side of all that pain. I invite you, jubilants, take an inventory today of your emotional house. What is it filled with? Is it filled with fetid and decaying dead thoughts, be they of your good times or your bad times? Are you spending a lot of time trying to arrange the world outside of yourself to not awaken those zombie thoughts and emotions, to not trigger you? How often do you stay triggered? Well, you're not doing very well adjusting the world to not hit you, to not trigger you. So it's time to go inside and clean house. How would it change the way you live, jubilants, if you were willing to recognize the stench of your own emotional house and become aware of how it's dimming the light of love that you were meant to bring into this world? How would it change the way you live if you were to recognize all the ways that you have purposely obscured your own holy light for fear of triggering a difficult or painful emotion? How would it change the way you live, jubilants, if you were to forgive yourself for all the feelings, all the thoughts and emotions that you have stuffed down and locked away and forgotten about until something triggers you? How would it change the way you live, jubilants, if you gave yourself permission to clean out your inner emotional house, to part with those dead thoughts and emotions that your ego has convinced you are so precious that you wouldn't know who you would be without them? That's one of Katie Byron's questions in the work, is who would you be without that thought? I'll tell you who you'd be. You'd be who you are. You'd be love. You'd be peace. You would be joy. You would be the light of the world. Without your dead thoughts and emotions, you could shine a bright light of love and forgiveness into the world that would heal everyone else of their own emotional hoarding tendencies. Who you are without these dead thoughts, according to Hafez, is a genius. Because you can build a swing in your backyard for God. And that, he says, sounds like a hell of a lot more fun. Doesn't it?
Birdhouse in your soul.
A little birdhouse for God.
In your soul.
Right.
You might be jealous.
So I invite you, jubilants, forgiveness. Forgive yourself today for holding on to all that emotional junk. Forgive yourself. For you knew not what you did. That's what the ego likes to do. It likes to just knock us unconscious and go, oh, well, let's bring that in and that, and yeah, you can come, you can come. No, let's clear out the house. Forgive yourself for stuffing it up in the first place. Don't bring new stuff in. Good things, bad things. Make a practice. Stay open. Let them pass. Let them pass through. Let them not dim your light even further or add another barrier. And follow Hafez's advice. Let's start laughing, drawing blueprints, gathering our talented friends. You carry all the ingredients to turn your existence into joy. Mix them. Mix them. Because jubilance, that is a recipe for infinite joy. Oh, yeah.